Tales of the Caballos by William H. White. Part 2, Chapter 3, Doc Nos. If you are enjoying these videos, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and set up proper notifications. Thank you. Most of what the general public knows of Doc Nos is related to the Victorio Peak incident at White Sands Missile Range during the 1940s. Very few people know of his presence on the Caballo Mountains outside of the locals who know of the history of the mountain. Doc Nos was a Cheyenne Indian whose real name was Milton Starr. He, along with his family, was moved to the Oklahoma Territory when he was a small boy. It was here where Milton grew up, and at the tender age of 10, he was caught stealing a horse. Because of his age and his Indian heritage, the authorities were unsure of what to do with him. He was finally sent to Fort Sill, Oklahoma, where he was befriended by Geronimo, who was also being held there as a prisoner of war. Milton left Fort Sill with maps sewn to the underside of his shirt. These were maps of the Caballo Mountains and the Apache treasure buried there. These maps were not used by him until later years after he met Ova, who later became his wife. Ova had just received a settlement from a previous marriage and had the means to launch a serious treasure hunt with her new husband. Prior to this, Milton Starr was apprenticed to the original Doc Nos, a podiatrist at the time when this skill was considered a trade similar to dentistry. Milton Starr eventually took the name of his mentor and soon became known as Doc Nos. He set up an office in New Mexico where the laws were laxed and there were plenty of people with sore feet. With this front established, Doc Nos and Ova began searching in the earnest for the treasure they knew was there. His Indian heritage served him well on the Caballo Mountains. Doc Nos usually went onto the mountains by himself for 2 or 3 days at a time, taking only canned tomatoes and sardines for sustenance while packing his deadly .45 caliber pistol. He walked in and out to get a feel of the country. He would sit silently at dawn or dusk and watch the night creatures enter and exit their lairs. This is how he located most of the entrances on the Caballo Mountains. Doc Nos always knew when he was being followed, and usually the follower ended up at the bottom of a ravine or mine shaft as a reward for their efforts. Doc Nos was a crack shot and quick to use his gun. This was a time of lawlessness on the federal lands. When a stranger was met in this country, one must rely upon the goodwill of the stranger or the quickness and accuracy of one's weapon. There was no substitute for this if you wanted to continue to live. Doc Nos arrived here during the depths of the Great Depression, like so many others, but he was always a loner. I am sure that he knew the goings on the other treasure hunters, but he never interfered with them, nor did he offer to join their ranks. The other treasure hunters knew well enough not to trifle with this lean, mean stranger. Of those who did, only the fortunate ones lived to regret it. Doc Nos strode to the Caballo Mountains bigger than life. He found treasure from the old Apache maps, as well as following in the footsteps of Buster Ward and Willie Dohit. What we know of Padre LaRue, we learned from Doc Nos. It was from under the hand of the body of the Jesuit priest that Doc Nos learned of Victorio Peak and the treasure that lied there. Doc Nos was typical of many of the young men of his time. He would occasionally drink too much and get into trouble and then pay the price dearly later. The story is told about Doc Nos serving time for pistol whipping a waitress in Santa Fe. I only hope it was for something worse than cold coffee. When he drank, he bragged about his exploits, which only caused him grievous times. Once, he was captured and tortured by his assailants, who burned his feet to the point that he never walked for several months after the incident. Doc Noss existed at a time when it was illegal to own gold. He had a lot of it, but nowhere to sell it. I estimate his findings of at least 400 bars of gold, and that may be very low. He stashed the bars around the countryside as the spirit moved him. To my knowledge, he only trusted one person who also helped him remove the gold bars. Her name was Josie Bell Butler, and she accompanied him on many of his extractions. This was before the days of four-wheel drive, and Doc Noss had an old Cadillac with 18-inch wheels that was almost as good as a four-wheel. A small shovel and a good run on the hill usually sufficed to get him where he wanted to go. Doc Noss was killed in the town of Hatch, New Mexico, in the late 1940s by a man named Ryan over a dispute concerning the disposal of gold bars. For those wishing to know more about this incident, I would like to recommend the book 100 Tons of Gold if you are fortunate enough to find a copy. There is a loose leaf copy of the book at the Hatch Library in Hatch, New Mexico. You can read the text, but you cannot remove the book. The librarians will copy all or part of it for you for a modest fee. It is well worth the time, but deals mainly with Victorio Peak and the shooting incident with Ryan. The end. Up next, Part 2, Chapter 4, The Palmer Brothers.